Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric, and you know what time of the month it is? It's the last Thursday in May. That means we're doing the MiSTer News Roundup, and it's been another absolutely incredible month because April delivered in spades for MiSTer and the community, and May has been no different whatsoever. We're going to have a long video today, almost 20 minutes, because a lot of stuff happened. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But without any more talk, let's get right into all the action. And the biggest news this month is FPGAZumSpass, or Robert, is still working on his Nintendo 64 core, and he's still dealing with the cycle-accurate software emulation of it. This is from an emulator, but we are going to be seeing, hopefully soon, something on MiSTer that resembles the Nintendo 64. It's definitely not going to start out looking like this, but I'm sure with Robert's knowledge and technical know-how, we might get there. But he has been updating everyone with different peeks into his software emulator, and he's talking about the fact that he's about done with that, and he's going to start moving over to FPGA emulation. And maybe by summer you might be seeing some simple homebrew ROMs running on your MiSTer. But taking a look at all the content from his cycle-accurate software emulator, what he did with the PlayStation 1 core and is doing with Nintendo 64 is he writes a complete software emulation program that is cycle accurate, so I'm sure he better understands the hardware. But seeing Ocarina of Time running on a software emulator, or something like Banjo-Kazooie, the idea that this could be coming to MiSTer, even if it's a year or 18 months from now, is spectacular. And I am most excited about this core because honestly, I think the Nintendo 64 is a little bit of a pain in the butt of piece of hardware to deal with. Even HDMI modding it, the image is good but not amazing, and it is a hard mod. So thinking that we could get something like this out of the MiSTer one day with HDMI is incredible. And he did update on the DDR3 tests as well for latency, and basically TLDR, he says it's not a problem whatsoever because there was a slight question of the RAM timings for MiSTer and the Nintendo 64, and that seems to be completely alleviated. And I just can't imagine playing something like Rush 2 here on the Nintendo 64 core on MiSTer. Now do remember, it's not a guarantee this will happen. There's still a lot of steps between where Robert currently is and where he needs to get Nintendo 64 running on MiSTer, and there could be some pratfalls or potholes to hit along the way, but it seems like it's shaping up well, and I can't wait to update you next time. Now switching from Nintendo to Sega, the Sega Saturn core was updated in May, and that's amazing on two fronts. One, it means SRG320 is good where he is, and two, it means we have more core to show you, because a lot of games that didn't used to work now work on this current core, and a lot of games that had issues have had some of those issues resolved. This update basically added in some instructions for VDP1 and VDP2, as well as the CPU side on the Hitachi chips. And showing Grandia here just walking around, it looks spectacular even if there are a few visual glitches. This core is feeling better and better every single update, and I can't wait to see what the next update brings, especially because every time I do a testing video, people comment down below and say they haven't heard of many of the games, and that is because the Saturn library is so deep. I can't wait for a lot of people's first experience with it to be on MiSTer FPGA, but leave me a comment down below and tell me for the next Saturn testing video what you might want to see tested, because I would be curious. But honestly, just seeing all of this work, the games that have good graphics and good sound, you really wouldn't be able to tell that you weren't playing on a real Sega Saturn, but you were playing an FPGA core implementation of it instead. That's not to say every game that works perfectly. Some have glitches, and a lot of games still do not load, but what does work on the Sega Saturn, what I've been showing you, really does feel very close to original hardware, and I'm sure as SRG320 continues to update the core through 2023, more of those games will come in line with it just feels like original hardware. But it's always fun to talk about Sega Saturn. It's one of my favorite consoles of all time, and that is the Saturn news for May. Now moving on to the arcade side, we have some updates on the Williams Y and Z arcade boards. Terrible names, Y and Z, really not much interesting that you can talk about there, but it is starting to boot, even though it does have some issues and it's not going very far. But if you looked into the boot sequence on real hardware, you would know that weird pattern was authentic. Obviously, the one game that everyone really wants is going to be Mortal Kombat. Every time I talk about Mortal Kombat, I say it's not my favorite game, but I understand a lot of people love it, and this is some of the work that's going to go to bringing Mortal Kombat to MiSTer FPGA, and the Y and Z boards are so very similar. The work is being done in conjunction. But think of something like Terminator, an absolutely epic light gun game for arcades. No, honestly, it's actually analog. It's not a light gun whatsoever, but we call it that. Playing something like this on our MiSTer is going to be spectacular. The Williams Y and Z boards had some absolutely iconic games on them, games that you probably know and remember if you grew up going to arcades in the 80s or 90s, and it's going to be so much fun to play them on MiSTer because honestly, even though Terminator is a very popular game, I haven't seen it on an arcade floor for like 1 or 2 years now. It's definitely getting less common, and having stuff like this re-implemented in FPGA is going to be spectacular. Because while this isn't the most expensive arcade board out there to buy, they're certainly not giving it away either, so honestly, MiSTer is going to be the go-to. Or a game like Total Carnage, an absolute banger of a game, and I love that the war is supposed to be in 1999, but look at the back, see that word factory back there? I have a question that I want you to answer in the comments. It is the following: a baby milk factory. Are they making milk for babies, or are they milking babies? I just can't tell. And I do love how cruel this game is. His entire chest just got burst open by that bomb on the ground. This is Narc or Smash TV levels of violence in a very cartoony way, and I absolutely love Total Carnage. It is a spectacular 2-player game or a solo experience. And the idea that we could be playing this on MiSTer FPGA, maybe by the end of the year or so, amazing. But the game is cruel. It tricked me with a bomb there with a pile of gems. But honestly, there's so many good games on these boards, Mortal Kombat being the most well known, that I really just can't wait for this to have a beta so we can talk about how it's doing, show it off on the channel, and talk about some more arcade fun. Now, something that happened after the cutoff for April's news video, and don't forget this is Tuesday, I do record these 2 days before I put them out, so if anything happened on Wednesday, it's not going to be in the video. But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the beta core is here, and it is absolutely spectacular. I know it's marked as beta, but this is like 99% complete. There's only a few audio issues and 1 or 2 graphical glitches here or there. But this is one of the games that everyone was waiting to come to MiSTer FPGA, and I know a lot of you don't update regularly, and sometimes I think that everyone's going to know something exists like TMNT, and people say they didn't realize it was available yet. But I understand that sometimes even I miss cores and I'm just browsing around. But this is one of those games that was in development for a very long time. People kept talking about it, and I kept talking about it on MiSTer News, and it is here today. If you update your MiSTer with Update All, it's going to bring down this game, and it is absolutely just one of those Hall of Fame first ballot levels of games for the arcade. It is definitely hard, it's definitely going to steal your non-existent quarters, but it is here on MiSTer FPGA today, and you can 100% check it out. Now onto the Jotego side, and not console or arcade, Neo Geo Pocket Color is still in the works, and apparently there's going to be a beta core sometime in June if you are a Patreon member of Jotego. I absolutely love the Neo Geo Pocket Color, I have too, with a collection of games, but honestly being able to play these games on my television upscaled is going to be incredible, because even with this screen mod on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, it is not a big screen, and sometimes you just want to see these games blown up to like 65 inches on your television. He's been talking about Neo Geo Pocket Color for a long time, and it looks like we're really close to getting that, and I can't wait to experience it, because both Metal Slug games on the platform are incredible. Dark Arms, a Beast Busters offshoot that's like an action RPG, is also a great game. SNK put a ton of awesome things on the Neo Geo Pocket Color, and very soon everyone's going to be able to play those on MiSTer. And it's one of those things, at least in North America, the Neo Geo Pocket was an absolute failure, but we'll have it soon on MiSTer. Now, keeping on the SNK front, again, late last month into the beginning of May, the Neo Geo CD core was updated, and this is feeling like 95% of the way there. Had to show you Metal Slug on Neo Geo because I talked about it on Pocket. But I love that MiSTer is getting Neo Geo CD as well, because even though the library does have a lot of overlap with the AES and MVS, a lot of games have arranged soundtracks, and the Neo Geo CD does have some exclusives to it as well. And obviously if we're going to have AES and MVS on the MiSTer, we may as well have the CD system as well. But it is working so incredibly well, and most of the games that I tested just seem to work 100% of the way, so it feels like Neo Geo CD on MiSTer FPGA is basically here. Now there are still some updates to come, I'm sure, and there are still some problems to resolve, but for the most part, if you just want to sit down and start loading Neo Geo CD games onto your MiSTer today, you can 100% do that. With the arranged soundtrack stuff like The Last Blade here, look, play, and sound absolutely spectacular on the core. The only things that don't seem to be added right now is there's no CDZ BIOS, and you cannot use the UniBIOS either. You're going to be basically using a stock BIOS with either a front or a top loader, which really doesn't change anything whatsoever. So hopefully soon the CD-Z BIOS with that faster loading and the UniBIOS come in, because those are going to be incredible additions that no Neo Geo CD should be without. Mine have both. But honestly, it's just so much fun to watch this happen, because Neo Geo, AES, and MVS have been on MiSTer for a very long time, but I love the completeness of getting the CD console over, and there is a lot to love on it. Don't assume just because you heard it's not worth it that it really isn't. Trust me, it is. Now, a quick note on the 32X, it has been updated as well recently, and I had a video last week talking about that, but SRG 320 has been adding updates to this core along with Sega Saturn, and that is because foundationally they are a similar hardware platform, so I'm sure some of the work can be derivative of the other core. And the 32X library, I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, it is not the best thing in the world, but there is still a lot of fun to be had. And it's one of those things, the hardware is not cheap. I've got one next to me, and honestly, I'm probably just going to be using my MiSTer from now on to play 32X, because the cabling system to get it to work is an absolute mess. But even things like Metalhead here, just seeing these real-time polygons with textures on MiSTer, it is incredible. Moving back over to Jotego though, and going to the arcade side, he has released a beta core for Aliens. This is not Aliens vs Predator. A couple people thought that's what we were talking about. That game's already available on MiSTer. Jotego did that like a year and a half ago now. This is the Konami beat 'em up run and gun game. People don't talk about it near as much as Capcom's version, but this game is absolutely spectacular, and it's one that I think everybody should be playing, and it is available as a beta core for Jotego's Patreon members right now. And trust me when I say, even though this game is weirdly colorful for an Aliens game, it is so much fun, especially with a second player. It even has stuff like this sprite scaling pseudo first person mode here in between levels. A lot of it doesn't have anything to do with Alien whatsoever. I don't remember these monsters in the movie. Leave me a comment down below if I'm just not remembering something right. But this is an amazing core, and it is part of the foundational work that Jotego and his team have been doing on the Konami side for their hardware, and hopefully this leads into more Konami games that are on further revisions of this hardware and even more powerful hardware in the future, because Konami has an absolute roster of amazing beat-em-ups, run and gun games, and the like in the 8 and 16-bit era. And of course, Castlevania, more known as Haunted Castle, is now available on MiSTer as well. It is definitely not my favorite game, but a lot of people were very excited about this. So if you didn't hear last month when I told everybody that it was available, you can play it today. Am I saying you should go play it? Well, that's up to you. If you're a glutton for punishment and want to play one of the hardest arcade games of all time, Haunted Castle is here for you. But the work on Haunted Castle brought us Aliens, and I'm going to ask you right now, what do you think that looks like? Because I have some definite opinions on what that character design is supposed to be. A lot of those opinions probably stuff you can't write in comments. Now, keeping on the arcade side of things, with the Jalco Mega System 1, or maybe it's Jalico or even Galco, I've never been quite sure, leave me a comment down below. But Rodland is here for MiSTer, but if you go over to the GitHub page, you're going to see all the different games that can run on this core, and don't forget the Mega System 1 has different revisions. This is just for A because there is a Rev Z, B, and C, and arcade companies did that a lot, basically slightly upgraded or tweaked existing platforms to run new games. But this is all of what can run on the core in the future. Right now we just have Rodland at the recording of this video, but something like P47 is an absolutely spectacular horizontal shmup that I feel like maybe a lot of people haven't played before, but it is a ton of fun, and I can't wait to see stuff like this come to MiSTer as well, because not every single hardware manufacturer for the arcades was Sega or Capcom or Konami. There are companies like Jalico here that made some amazing games that just didn't get the same amount of love on the arcade floor back in the day, but these are games that a lot of people really would love, and it's one of those things. Sometimes something's popular in Europe and not in the US, or sometimes things hit in Japan but never came over here. So this is what I love about MiSTer as well. It gives you the opportunity not to just play stuff like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a game that basically everyone and their mother knows. It also gives you the opportunity to play stuff like this, P47 here, or Rodland, which is just a ton of fun. It's basically Bubble Bobble meets Parasol Stars meets Snow Brothers. It is such a great game, and it's one of those things, if you want to go play it, you can right now, but the news for this month is that they're working on more games for the core. Now moving back over to Jotego for 1 second on the arcade side, the JT Kiwi core has been promoted to public. That means you do not need to be a Patreon member to play these games, although you probably should think about supporting him. He does a ton of good work, and there are a lot of awesome games on this core as well. Something like in Sector X here, totally underrated game, because Taito either made hits, things right in the middle, or games like Dino Rex, one of the worst arcade games in my opinion of all time. But leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite Taito game is, because I would be curious. But you can play things like Kageki here with all of these super deformed, weird, chibi looking heads. I've never understood this game, I'm not very good at it, but I know a lot of people love it, and that means if you do love it, you can go play it on MiSTer today. But of course, as I've mentioned a few videos ago, if you've never played the New Zealand story before, you 100% have to check it out. But fair warning, once you hear the main theme for this game, you're going to be humming it for weeks. It's going to be stuck in your head. There is no avoiding it whatsoever. Now popping over to the Irem M92 core for a moment, it came out in April and Wickerwaka did an amazing job, but he now has a working turbo core as well, which is going to upclock these games, because the Irem M92 board does have an absolute ton of slowdown in certain games. You either love it or hate it. I have no issue with the slowdown whatsoever because that's how the original board was, but I can understand where people don't like the slowdown in things like In the Hunt or other games like Gun Force 2. It is still a work in progress and it's 100% manual installation as of the recording of this video. It might come to update all eventually, but right now if you do want to play around with it, just go over to the MiSTer Discords into the Irem M92 channel and you should find it pinned to the comments there. But it is great to get these turbo core options because I do understand that some people aren't into slowdown, even if that's what the original arcade PCB did, and we have the 2X core for PlayStation as well, so it does make sense that we are doing these sort of things on MiSTer. And I will have a full review of this core along with the turbo mode in a couple weeks. I'm still just playing around with it, but if you want a turbo Irem core right now, go to the MiSTer Discord and you can pick it up. Now on the Capcom CPS3 side, Jotego has not made any fundamental updates to how the progress is going, and I'm only putting this footage in the video because I know if I don't mention CPS3 in one way or another, I'm going to see a lot of comments down below asking how it's doing. But I do like that algorithmic engagement, so leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite CPS3 game is. Feed the algorithm, it is hungry. Now Anton Gale is making progress on the elevator action core as well. Last time we talked about this, it was basically a sprite on the screen, but now it's sprites on the screen with some corruption. But elevator action is such a good game. It is so simple, but I love the presentation of it. It's like 4 colors on screen at once, but it is so incredibly challenging. This is the type of game you think looks simple, you go to sit down and play it, and then an hour has gone by and you do not know where that hour has gone. Definitely keep attention to this core, and I will tell you when it is done so you can play it, because elevator action is one of those iconic 80s arcade games. If you've never played it, you should. Now, Darren here is revisiting some of his Toaplan stuff, and he's talking about Rally Bike, because there are some cores out of Toaplan, but not all of them. And if we take a look at the listing here, this board has an absolute ton of awesome games, and definitely deeper cuts than you would expect out of somebody like Capcom or Sega, but OutZone here being one of my favorites, and that is available on a MiSTer FPGA core that you can check out. But I'm excited to see more Toaplan stuff coming, because not every single game that runs on every single board runs the exact same way. I have arcade boards in my closet that are from the same manufacturer, from the same board set, that do have hardware revisions, and that's just kind of how they did things. But speaking of boards, the Terasic DE10 Nano is seeing better stock. DigiKey has 39 in stock as the recording of this video, so if you wanted to go buy one when I was talking about it, you could buy up to 39 of them, and it's at $229.56, not the worst price in the world, but the board has gotten a little more expensive. Now if you go to Terasic's website, you can buy them for $225, but their shipping is going to be higher, but they seem to ship within the week. They're saying it's estimated to ship on 5/31, but I bet it would be even sooner than that. If you don't own a MiSTer and you just watch these news videos because you're thinking about jumping into the ecosystem, now is the time. It's been the time for like the last year, but I'm trying to convince you even more. And I'm going to be building an entire MiSTer setup on camera once the rest of these parts arrive. But trust me, if you don't have a MiSTer, it's time. If you have one, maybe get a second one. But at the end of every news video, I recap the most exciting news of the month. And for me, it is Robert's Nintendo 64 software emulation that's going to be starting work on an FPGA core here, because just seeing this in in real time. I love how Robert updates everyone on the progress. I like to see how the sausage gets made, and I know a lot of you guys do too, but the idea that we could be seeing the intro to Ocarina of Time potentially running on the MiSTer, maybe not even until 2024, still excites me, because even though the Nintendo 64 isn't the deepest library in the world, it has some absolutely classic games in it that you should 100% play if you never have. But that is all the news for May as of the recording of this audio. I did it Tuesday morning, and you're watching this video on Thursday morning, so if anything happened Tuesday afternoon into Wednesday, it's going to be moving over to the June video. But leave me a comment down below, tell me what your most exciting news of the month was from this video, and tell me what you hope to see on MiSTer in the future. Short of that, I'll have videos throughout the week. I'll be back next Thursday with another MiSTer video, but May's been another awesome month, and I can't wait to see what June brings. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!